Hello.
Yeah, no.
Let's see if I could see the peoples. All the beautiful peoples. Hi, Donagita. Orita's here. And Mikayla.
Hello.
Welcome.
Yeah. Welcome,
Hi.
buddy.
Oh, so good to see you. So I think I'm just gonna jump right in. And Tom, let me know if for some reason my connection doesn't work, or you can't hear me. Hopefully someone will. I'm on my phone, so I'm broadcasting live from Florence, Italy. How cool is that, right? But we can still communicate, but it may be a little bit spotty from this hotel room we just checked in a little while ago.
Meaning you're
Ah,
traveling Europe.
and
Ah,
yeah, it's a
I'm
whole
just
it's a
I'm
whole
just
wide
over
world
the
out
hill, I'm just over the hill. Just feel free to come visit.
there. I'll just ride on over. It is actually pretty close here, you know. Europe is small and very, very convenient. So, anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about community today. And it's really the beginning of an exploration. I was 7 days on a retreat in Tuscany. So, it was south of Florence, about an hour's train ride south. The closest town is called Busini, and and on a beautiful Italian villa in the hills. And we were pampered all week. We had beautiful plant-based meals. And we did yoga every morning. And at the beginning, we were invited to create an intention for the week. And at first, I thought, I don't want to make a specific intention. Like, I felt like Tom, right, Tom? like I don't want to ask for something specific. And I had this general intention about something about identity and seeing through my personal identity a little more. But then it came out. I said, "No, actually, I do have a specific intention. I've really been thinking about community a lot and what it means. And I just created an intention to see something new about it, to get clearer about whatever it is that I would like to be a part of creating inside of community. And just to give a little background, because not everyone may know the projects that I've been involved in and I've been slowly dragging Tom into, around eco villages and communities, regenerative communities. And I've been learning a lot. And also community as far as team building, like having a team inside of a project or what we might call a business perhaps, and doing that differently with a sense of community, like co-leading as community. What is all this? And there are people who have been studying and practicing and experimenting this far longer than I have. So this is a new game for me in some ways. But I've been sitting with this, like, what project would I really like to dive into? Because it seemed clear to me that it wasn't, I'm really not that motivated to do things that are small and possible. I really want to do something that looks impossible, that I don't know that I can pull off, that we can pull off. And I want to do it with a group of people. And Tom and I have been talking about this inside of community. And so that was the intention I had for this week, sort of loosely, like, I want to see something new about that. And while I was there, it was a surprise to me. I didn't know this was going to happen. That one of the days, one of the people from the Damanhur community in Italy, which is a spiritual community about 30 kilometers outside of Torino in northern Italy, was there to talk about Damanhur and also some crazy stuff about time and very esoteric spiritual metaphysics and physics of spirituality. But he shared some things about the Damanhur community and what brings community together. And it's something I've been thinking about. And a couple of things have been standing out to me. And one of them is that a mistake that's easy to make inside of community or inside of a business is would be for me to say, I want to create a community that I want to live in. and then impose that idea upon other people. Impose it upon the environment, the land that I choose to have this community on. Impose it upon the people who join the team or who become participants in the community. Instead of co-creating from the beginning, engaging people in the creation of the community that we're going to be inhabiting together, and let our creation arise from that. And as I've been learning more about regenerative communities, they often fall in love with the beautiful technologies, ways to be carbon neutral, or even energy positive, where you can have solar power and convert, use gray water so that the wastewater comes back and use it in your bathrooms and the toilets and things like that. And there are all kinds of cool things that way. And then they fall in love with ideas of all the beautiful things that you can do with people inside of community, like have yoga classes and community meals. And it feels like they're missing that piece of just being together and allowing something authentic and new to be created from that. So that was one thing that came out of listening to this Damanhur presentation. But the big thing that occurred to me, because they were talking about, this is a community, by the way, that's almost 50 years together. And they have built underground temples and they've now revealed what they did. They did this in secret. They did not let the Italian government know that they had done this. They built these underground temples. There are 8 chambers that they have revealed, and they're gorgeous with artworks that were not created by artists, but rather they were artists, but the people, the inhabitants of Damanhur, no one knew who was going to do what when they started. And they just all answered the call of creating this. One of the things that this gentleman highlighted that made the community stick was having a huge impossible project. In fact, their vision was, I think, is a 400-year vision for what they want to do. And he said that what this does is if there's something we see that we can do, it's not particularly interesting to us.
That was a very
it's not particularly interesting.
that was a very dramatic place for her to disappear.
What did I say? What was the last thing I said?
You said that doing something small is not particularly interesting to you.
Oh,
If we
is that
don't
the last
see
thing?
it.
But yeah.
Are we doing Brigadoon now?
Oh my goodness. So that was the last thing. I said, wow, that was a while ago. I dropped out a while ago. So did I talk about Damanhur at all? Did you hear me talk
Oh
about
yeah,
that?
yeah. It was just
okay.
It was just a minute ago when you said you were talking about the 400-year projects, and if it's something
Yes.
you can see and can do, it's not all that interesting. And that's where you cut out.
Yeah. And I was speaking about you in general, us as people. There's something about having what looks like an impossible project that's something that's very inspiring and very big, that can really bring us together as a community. And so there are a couple applications for this that I'm sitting in. And one of them is, so what would here we are a community, a group of people coming together with a common purpose of exploration. Tom and I have been talking about what that might be for us. Something big and inspiring that maybe we don't know that we can do, but we want to attempt it. We want to try it. Like, what would that be? And then I've been thinking about working with the individual communities to help them discover what that is and help them co-create together. And what might be possible when each of us takes our dreams and shares them and brings them out. And we say, hey, these are my dreams. And we allow them to come together in a larger dream, maybe an impossible dream, something that's not just about us, but it's also deeply connected with whatever the environment we find ourselves in, the nature around us, the other people, even the systems. This is a truly regenerative approach, which I can't claim to know much at all about all of the systems and the relationships between them that are involved in regenerative projects. But it's incredibly inspiring. And this question is one that I'm sitting in, and I'm like, yeah, this game is one that I want to play. So I'm kind of wondering, and I would love to turn this to you, Tom, for your thoughts on community, because I know part of the reason why I invited you to begin co-creating with me is because when I heard you say, I'm a community builder,
Right.
like when you stepped into that, and I went, oh, that's the thing. Tom, I always had this, Tom, we're doing something. And it fell into place. I'd love to know what your dreams are around community, what you're seeing about what brings or what might bring community together,
Mm.
and anything else that might be sparked by what I've shared, because it was a lot of babbly stuff that was interrupted by internet issues. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, Steph. I guess the first thing that I want to say is I can just feel in your presence and your speaking, I can feel the aliveness and the freshness, especially. There's a fresher feeling to this whole thing, whatever it is that we're all doing together. And it's exciting. It really is exciting. And so just, as Steph said, she and I have talked about this a lot over the past year. And part of where it came from me, it kind of started for me in coming across the three principles. I don't know if everyone here knows what the three principles are, know about the three principles community and the transformational possibilities of that particular understanding. And it came from being in an apprentice program for practitioners, which I know, Rick was in, Michaela might have been into or might be in, and just really enjoying the resources, the workshops we had together. And at the same time, there would be this sense that there's something more here that could be happening. And it has to do with, for me, which is a community perspective. So in the world that a lot of us navigate ourselves in, there are a lot of things happening. There are organizations, there are programs, there are people who have like individual mentors and coaches that they work with, and it's all like good, rich stuff. And at the same time, there's, I think, an additional element to all of that can be really powerful. And that comes to me under the umbrella of what I would call community. So community can feel maybe a little more nebulous sometimes, because it's not a program, it's not a class, it's not a organization. And at the same time, anything that is already being done, you can say, oh, that's a community. There is let's just call it a three principles community. It exists. So what I'm interested in is really the possibilities. And to me, what community ultimately is about connection, connection among people who have something in common that they want to bring to the world, something that they want to do. But to me, it's about, there's that element of wanting to be a good presence in the world, doing good things in the world. So community, comes from the same, as far as I know, at least in English or Latin or wherever the word comes from, it comes from the same root word as the word common. And so we all have something in common just by being here. And it also is very similar, maybe exactly the same root word as the word communicate. So when you think of a community of people having things in common, and there are vehicles to connect and communicate, that can just be, for me, like that can just be a really delightful thing, and it can be a really powerful thing. So I think, to sum it up, we already do, just by being here together. And what Stephanie has created in the Awaken Business and Wildspire, we do call it the Wildspire community. We have events, we have a platform, et cetera. We have all this stuff. And, community can always be deeper, richer, more alive. And that's kind of the direction that I'm really interested in going, and bringing the aliveness more alive, and bringing the connection more alive. And then also just the possibilities for what we can share in the world. Now, I think I know a lot of people like me who've been, exposed to the three principles and have had good things happen within themselves in their lives, and maybe even, transformations. Like we all who have had some kind of good experience or something beneficial, and we want to share that with the world. There's no doubt we want to, whether we're giving back as a coach or a volunteer, or we've created an organization that works in prisons or in communities, like the different educational things that are happening. So anyway, there's all this stuff happening. And to me, the word community can be very intentional, because it sort of, just like I said, it adds a dimension to maybe what we're already doing. And it can be really powerful. It can be very helpful to us as individuals, and it can be, just beneficial to the world. So those are some of the discussions that Steph and I have been having over the past year. And so we're just kind of going bit by bit. But as she was saying, it's like, well, yeah, we're talking, but if you want to do, in my opinion, if you want to do community in a really nice way, powerful way, it's not about one or two people saying, hey, come in, join our community, join our vision. It's like, let's create something together, because that's what it's about. And maybe the last thing I'll say about community, and again, my opinion, my perspective, the best communities and the most powerful communities are non-hierarchical. They're sort of, to use a more formal word, they're very democratic. Maybe somebody's facilitating and leading, but people are, we're equals in the community, and we're all, trying to do something together. So you've heard Steph say a little bit about this, and, you've heard my little like opinions and perspectives and dreams. So I think I'd like to open it up and just to see, like, what are you hearing in this? Is this something that you've thought about before? Is this something that's kind of newer idea, that community is something we can create as an, additional dimension to what we're already doing? And so I just want to kind of open it up to anyone.
So many places to go with this. So can I ask what do you just want to know what comes up around that for us personally, or I'm wondering if you have a more specific question about creating a community and being a part? Are you talking about, I don't know, I'm not sure. I have a sense that, are you creating a community and you're looking for people to join this community and create it with you in a different way? Or are you posing, just in general, what is community to you? I'm not quite sure if you're looking for a certain direction here.
I think the more general, the more open, the better. Is, what is community to you? Maybe that's one question. Is it something you value? Is it something you like being, you think is important? And then I guess that's one thing. And then, well, let's just start there. Whatever, where it's not really a specific question, like this is a a project or something that we're starting today, because it's
Mhm.
more open to me, at least. It's more open-ended than that. It's more like, what do you see as possibilities? Maybe we'll do something together as a group. Who knows? But we're really open-ended.
Mm. Well, I love it because community has been something that's been brewing for months for me personally. And being drawn to go to events like the one Mara Gleason
Mhm.
in Chicago, and it's just like, I don't even know why I'm here. I have no idea why. I've only gone to a couple of their calls, but I felt like I needed to, and it's just like, why am I here? Because this feels way too big for me.
Right.
It just feels like huge. So just a tiny bit of background. I'm working with someone now on Speaking with Impact. And one of the things we're doing is finding our stories. So you go through your story life and talk it out to her. She's very good at picking stuff out. Anyway, and you find themes that have happened throughout your life.
Mhm.
And that's one of my themes is community, is connecting people. You need to talk to them, you need to talk to them, or bringing people together for an adventure. Like, to me, adventure is like an outdoor movie night, like something out of your ordinary everyday that brings people together. And the delight is in seeing their faces, like being right next shoulder to shoulder with them, and like, here we are. This has been months in the making. And we're just like, it's almost like when my kids were little, taking William around the neighborhood, and houses were, things are being dug, and it's just seeing it all through their eyes. So community in that way, that is part of it. It's bringing people together to experience something new and seeing it through each other's eyes, because we all have this cool perspective.
Yeah.
So yeah. And also that what I saw that with Mara's, group, and I've seen it because for months I've been wanting to create my own Facebook group. I think, oh, who needs another Facebook group? But really, it's like, it's the only place that I can see that offers how I see having people come together in the way, right, that you have. I'll just share this one more thing, because I really don't know where this is all going. My son is in New Zealand right now. I'm in Canada. He's been there for, less than a week. But he shared, like a photo, and then I shared it with my sisters who are in Canada as well. And my one's of the little cabin he's in. And she said, oh, I love tech sometimes. It's like, yes, tech, it like brings people together. It helps the left brain mind. Like, we're all connected already. We're already all connected. And tech allows the left brain, the intellectual brain, to like get on board with that, because there's something physical. So I'll just start that off, because I really didn't know where it was going. It was just a lot of community things coming up for me now.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I'm a big fan of not knowing where you're going. So and it's just good to hear people. And I'll just say for those who haven't been there too, I was in the One Thought program. I've actually been through a couple iterations of that. And this is what's we're talking about today kind of came out of that. And they're doing their own thing there. They've created a community in Chicago and worldwide, but based in Chicago. And a lot of times it just comes from like a question or a little inkling or desire, like we don't know what it is, but we know, something good we can do. Maybe one way of describing community is we can do something good and fun together, is another way to say it. So anyone else want to share anything that this topic would just, whatever you're feeling, thinking, just feel free to share.
I'd love to just point out that community was there since the beginning of humans, or even before. And some, as you said, we do something together that is useful or fun. They were hunters-gatherers, they had to have community to survive. So I believe I see things through the eyes of the different chakras. So each chakra would sort of create, or the consciousness of different levels of consciousness would create different kinds of communities, or the purpose would be different, and how it's being done would be different usually. As a young woman, I have seen many spiritual communities in Europe, in Switzerland, in India, and I was always attracted to it, but always at some point I thought, oh my gosh, this is just so human.
Yeah.
You can put a white flag and some nice emblem and say we are spiritual, but it's so human. So
Right.
everything is interrelated in the consciousness, especially those who claim they want to have a spiritual community. They usually have to be very, very careful that how they understand what spirituality is. I was just recently discussing that. So community for me is, I put it in the chat, being together in unity. And
Right.
as Michaela said, we are all one, but we don't know it anymore. We have forgotten about it, or only frequent, glimpses of eyes, we feel it. But when we are in a smaller unity, that is easier to be felt. Just think of tribal people who do the same dance, the same steps, or football or politics. They feel united in these moments. And I think what Stephanie and we want to sort of, I believe you want to level up in community. Is that right? I mean,
Yeah.
not just being in a party, or not just a neighbor community, but something of a greater value.
Yeah. And that there's also, difference between, because as you said, communities have been around since the beginning, and they're all around us. I mean, we're part of so many communities already. So for me personally, it's less about, creating a community or creating a specific community. That can happen, but more the possibilities of having, a greater appreciation, a greater sense of community. And I'll give you just a brief example. For a while, when I first moved to Portland, Oregon, right, I was working for a business here in the United States. We call them food cooperatives. So they're not owned by a private business person or by a corporation. They're owned by people who put their money together to create a natural foods grocery store for their neighborhood. Okay. And it came with a lot of like a mission, values, etc. And I worked there for a good almost 5 years, and I was the community. I just happened to be the community outreach person for that co-op. Now, it was a wonderful place. And yet very, very often, as we went about our work, as we went about our mission, a lot of times there was more ego than there was community. And this happens, this is everywhere, right? This is everywhere. But I often felt when I was working there, it's like, wow, if we just had a little bit more sense of like, hey, we're in this together. We're here for other people. We're here to, work things out together. And often there was more of a hierarchical feeling to it than a community feel to it. And so for me, like seeing what community is, what it can be, is something that can be, it's not a matter of starting something new. It's something that already exists. But if you have a deeper maybe appreciation for it or its possibilities, and there is a way, because it can't just be about one person having that perspective. If there's a way throughout a community where it's kind of very similar to what transformational coaches or like the three principles does with individuals, where you get a fresh insight, a fresh perspective on what's going on. When you do that among people, then what you're doing together can take on a new aliveness. So again, it's not necessarily about creating something. It's about also about what's already happening, possibilities that you might even by this conversation that we're having today, you may see new possibilities within the communities that you're already a part of, and can really open up, as I said, some new dimensions to what's already happening. But yeah. So anyone else want to share anything about this? What you're thinking, feeling?
I noticed that Stephanie's rectangle is lighting up. Do you want to say something, Stephanie, before I do?
I don't see her on my screen, so.
Oh, you don't? All right. Well, that's okay.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know whether she was.
Yes, actually, I
Oh,
I
sorry,
do,
Steph,
Peter.
I haven't seen you
Can
for
you hear me?
I haven't seen
Go.
I haven't seen you for about 20 minutes.
I'm still here with you. I know it's very hard. I'm trying to see everybody on my phone too.
Okay.
You know, thank you, Peter, for mentioning that and creating space for me. I love what's coming up here because it's where I think everything begins with what already always is. This desire for community that many people experience comes from a feeling of being alone many times. And they're just desiring community and not realizing the connection and community we have all around us. And I could count myself in that, feeling quite isolated in my surroundings, even though I wouldn't say I was feeling alone. And I'm realizing that it begins, as always, with all things truly inside of us, with recognizing the connection that we already have, that we might not feel, but we can never lose. And when that happens, and then we invite community, create an intention for that connection with others, from that connection within, it's coming from a different place. And I'm really curious about what community looks like from that. And I do like the idea of creating something specific, but I think it begins right where we are. And that's part of the dream that I've been sharing with Tom, is that what if we could help people to discover the connection and community they already have? And then perhaps they'd like to create a form of community, but maybe they just recognize what's already there and it begins to be nurtured and grown. And maybe that happens for us, but I have a sense of wanting to help people see that more deeply and navigate the ups and downs of being human together in relationship from that place, and what that might be like if we had an understanding of that more deeply. And it goes beyond, when I talk about that being in relationship, well, some people say, oh, well, you've got to express your authentic self. I'm like, yes, absolutely. Except your authentic self isn't the bullshit nagging thoughts that you hold back because it's gonna, or you think it may piss somebody off. No, actually, your authentic self is who you are when you don't have a lot on your mind. And when you have more on your mind, that's when we get into trouble in relationship. And that's not a problem when we can see it. And what if we had that understanding inside of community? I don't think that means we don't have conflicts. I don't think that means that we don't have hurt feelings and misunderstandings. But I think that does allow us to be better able to navigate them and perhaps create an environment where we support each other in that. Instead of feeling like we have to pull away, we can have space when we need it and still remain connected. So that's kind of what comes up for me around community and what that might mean. And I'm really interested in this question of, when do you feel, what makes you feel connected in community? Like, what's really going on there? And how could we experience more of that? So I'm done for now. I don't know if Peter wants to tag onto that. I bet you got something.
This would be a great time for a bathroom break for anybody who wants to leave for 10 minutes or so. Um, I'll do less harm that way. So yeah, no, I have 2 or 3 things to say, and we'll see where they fit. Just listening today to this invitation, it's like, oh, looking for community. The one small practical thing, as I get more updates, I will let you all know, but pretty sure in the next few months that the folks who are setting up, I think it's feelthevibe.net, but they're just trying to set up the moral equivalent of kind of social networking without the standard social networks. So something that's got a lot of privacy to it and doesn't have news feeds, doesn't have advertisements, but that really potentiates folks who want to come together, especially in whatever you want to call it, the 3 principles realm. So it's just easier for people to network together, especially if they want to do something local. So they can do something international if they want to, contact a lot of people and then narrow a group down so that you're working with people locally. So, and I especially trust what these folks are up to because I know Dave Nichols. He was one of the first people I got in contact with when I was getting exposed to what was then psychology of mind. And Dave, Amy Chen Mills' name passed on the Center for Sustainable Change to Dave Nichols, and Dave passed it on to somebody who worked with Michael Neal for a number of years, Cherry, I want to pronounce her last name, Alamo. And it ran out of gas, funding, all sorts of things. But it was the social justice thing in the 3 principles community for a number of years. So they're aiming they're aiming to make it easier for all sorts of people in the 3 principles community to be with each other. So that's one thing. If I can find a way to make that sound sexy, I'll let you know. And then when I think of community right now, I think of the 3 communities that I have some association with. Since even in the next 6 weeks, trying to get like 40 or 50 CEUs and take a jurisprudence examination just to re-up my licensure as a licensed professional counselor. I know something about how mental health works in this country and unfortunately internationally as well. And there are ways I bump into it. And I want to be open to having conversations that at least open up space for people not to be constantly swirling around what they think they know about trauma and what trauma-informed anything might become. So mental health, number 1. Number 2, the kind of wonderful community growth interactive thing called Interplay, where their wonderful efforts at inclusivity and equity, they're bearing some fruit, but we're still in a position after about 10 years where there's a sense of you gotta kind of grit your teeth a bit and really intentionally be ready to play with the shit that may come up when we're trying to be very, very sensitive to what people experience, depending upon who's in the room. And if there are enough people who look more or less like me, or and not enough people who look like there's visible diversity, I'm just saying, that is, I'll be taking what I know and what I can present in that direction. And the middle of June will be kind of my touchdown date, because there's an international gathering of interplay leaders happening in Greensboro, North Carolina, which is not too far away from where I live. And I put myself through a training just last weekend, 4 days in a row, just really bumping into pretty much everything that Interplay has been doing for 10 years. I'm just saying, it's at the best of intentions, trying to do something really playful. And it still felt like we were armoring ourselves and trying to be very, very careful. Like, oh, there's something off here. The sensitivity, the awareness can come with something much more alive than the so-called trauma-informed understanding. Just saying that. So I think of community, and then there are Quakers who are in even worse shape than the interplayers, who theoretically know something about hanging out in the divine presence. Quakers bearing huge burden, so much so that they don't get that they're not worshiping anymore. These are my communities, 3 limping communities. and I want my job to be that I go in there and I bring up a bunch of flip charts and make big pictures about state of mind, and they all get converted in about half an hour, because they've heard something and they've realized, oh, it's not just conceptual. I want it to be that way because I can do that. And yet what's been coming to me over months and months, and it keeps kind of dragging out, thank God, is even just a couple of nights ago, I was asking myself, so in the middle of the night, it's always in the middle of the night, okay, Peter, yeah, I'm touching into something that feels like well-being more and more each day. It's just kind of available. And I keep complaining, and then I drift back into being present, being alive. And in the middle of the night, I thought, so what, with my history of more than 50 years of depression, which I've come out of about the last 4 or 5 years, what was there? What was in the middle of that? Because I want to be able to tell the grand, correct 3 principles story. It says, transcendent love was always there. And what I get was not quite, it's already swept through all my past, and it's utterly glowing with light and love. But it's like, I just, if there'd been a shaman at like 20 different nodal points in my life, just somebody to say, you're totally buying into that kind of tragedy that's happening in the world, Peter. I get it. Now let's see if we can open up a space next to it, where something new and different and life-giving might come through with exactly the same data. Something like that. And for me, it just felt in the middle of the night, like in the middle of everything, it wasn't quite humming. It wasn't quite a real purr that I could have tuned into. It was like right next to it all was this immense silence that had a possibility in it, that just had possibility in it. Like, I right this second. That's what I know. And that's what I just feel drawn to bring to at least the three communities that I named. And I love I love being able to touch into a group like this so that I can speak kind of freely, you know, without all the potentially political things coming up in the groups that I'm talking about. So there's something about being able to touch into this place as well. So that's what I've got to offer. That's what I've got to offer. Thanks.
Well, great. Thanks, Peter. Thank you. Anyone else? Hey, Rick.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a couple of things. One's kind of interesting because my last client was in the process and still is. He had bought about 150 acres in the middle of the province where I live, in the middle of nowhere, and had this vision of creating a community of sustainable living. And he approached me not to help him with the project, but to help him communicate the project. And so, you know, part of that was he gave me some background information about the project and some of his ideas around it, which you had talked about, Tom, a bit about, you know, having no hierarchy of rule but it was interesting because I had opinions about certain things that were kind of coming up a little bit. It's like how do you decide to move forward if you know like you just majority rules? Well, that's like voting, right? You know, and the notions of consensus and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, I just kept all that to myself because that wasn't what I was there for. But it does evoke an imagination of can a group of people come together carrying like the notion of letting go of ego and allowing things to flow through. A little bit like you said in that interview with Rob Cook, Tom, which I really loved the interview about, you know, starting with a totally fresh canvas and just throwing a bunch of paint to it to see what sticks, kind of a thing, right? And then calling it art. You know, and can we do that and call it a community? So aside from that, for me, it's interesting because I've been playing not necessarily with the word community, but from what I think kind of defines community. And Stephanie said two words out of the three that I came up, and I think Peter kind of related to the third one, and is the value of, from a community perspective, connection, safety, and support. And I was talking to somebody in the addiction field, and we were talking about, you know, the degrading of the existing communities that are out there. And when you look at, you know, yeah, there's lots of connection, there's lots of people, you know, like we're connected constantly, but there's no safety or support.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a deal, right? So you know, we were talking about the notion of, well, if we could provide, you know, the healing environment needs those three things. It's the triad, right? And if you're missing any one piece of the triad, you're not you're not moving forward in the healing process. And I think that's why communities are formed, no matter what you want to call them under various things, is to bring people together, unify them under a common whatever,
Right.
but provide safety.
Right.
And that looks differently too, right? And then, but support, like, so safety to have your own opinion, to not be judged, like Peter was saying. But then there's that support piece of, being there. And then also contributing your support also. So there's that sort of the extra level of involvement. Yeah, so that's just some of my thoughts. And then, can you have a community? Because most communities right now are designed
Right.
for some purpose or whatever. It's an interesting notion. Can you have a community without design? I don't know. Anyway, interesting topic. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Rick. Thank you for everything you contributed there. And I was especially feeling the words care and support, and how integral they are to anything that we do together, whether it's two people in a relationship, or whatever ways we all interact with each other in the world, and how we are in more defined communities and organizations and projects. That care is so essential. So thank you so much for bringing that, and I can really feel that too as you say that. Appreciate that. Looks like we have maybe about a few, 8-10 minutes left. Does anyone else want to say anything? Bruce, or is it or how do you say name? Orit? I don't think we've met before. I don't know. Hi.
Orit.
Great. Anything that this is spurring on for you? Anything you want to share?
A little distracted by my child crying in the background, which is
Oh.
kind of relevant because that just having a child has really, help has really created the phrase, or in me, it takes a village. It takes a village. So that's kind of what's been coming up for me as we're talking about this.
Well, thank you. That's such a down to earth, something we all can relate to, I hope, in some ways, with family and taking care of each other. How about you, Bruce? Anything you want to share before we close out?
Sure, I'll be happy to jump in. The kind of the triad that I think of community at the very base is connection, and then relationships, and then community. And one thing that's really been helpful, because the word connection just comes up so frequently, or at least for me it has in recent weeks, and it was really brought home yesterday. I was on an equine Zoom call for a couple hours because I spend time with horses, and we were talking about the polyvagal theory, and that mammals have evolved to incorporate that in the way that they relate, and especially in herds. And so it's a great learning experience to be around, especially dogs and horses, and watch them connect or not, and then over time build a relationship, and then perhaps a community, and a community could be a herd. Trust is really important, because that gets to the survival piece. About what was mentioned earlier about support. Earlier in our history, when we were a more agrarian society, the support came also in the realm of efficiency, that sometimes you need to stand together to get a job done. and you get it done more efficiently that way. And we certainly have lost that in larger communities because we're so independent. And, it's interesting that my wife and I are selling the property that we're on here that we built 15 years ago, and we're closing on it in a couple days, and then on another one that we're purchasing a townhome. And this is a 55 and above active adult community, very nice aesthetically and all that, but you start to hear the voices of the neighbors like, well, why exactly are you moving? And it's kind of like, well, maybe they'll need to someday too. But this is definitely our choice, and this opportunity came up. But, you spend so much time maintaining a property on the inside and the outside and the structure and all that. And even though this was brand new when we built it, it does require maintenance after about 15 years. And it's interesting to see all these people living in houses up and down the street, and they all have different opinions as to why they think you're moving and what you're doing. And, does this look good or not? And, a lot of the things we're doing right now are purely aesthetic, to get things ready for the sale and to keep it up to standard. And that has served us, and that it's appreciated, and we're going to recoup some value that we'll be able to use for other things. But it just kind of, what is the focus of your community? What's important? What's the hierarchy in your community? And that communities are fluid too. You may have thought that a neighbor on this side, truly understood you, but then maybe they didn't, because we live in boxes and, just kind of go through our days. So I think another thing that's come to realize for me is fluidity in community. It changes as people age, as their health status changes, as their economic status changes, and to remain open in that, not to judge it but accept it. And it's just interesting to see people when all of a sudden you put a for sale sign in your yard, and they have so many questions. And to me, it's a real positive thing. And my wife too. We're grateful we're here, but the sense of community is a little different. And I think we're past the idea of, do we water grass so we can mow it, so we can fertilize it, so it can look good, and so we don't get any HOA reports on, you got to pick your weeds and all this and that sort of stuff. I mean, it's really interesting the time that we spend. And now I have just observed people and I go, wow, there's a lot of time and energy, and I can see how you can get some joy out of certain things, but also I think a lot of them could benefit from being on this screen right now.
Yeah.
Being in the sense of this community. But to a lot of them, they would say, what are you really talking about there? What are these principles, and, why do you really care about that? Well, we do live in separate realities. And that's one of the great things I learned through the 3 Ps, is that we do live there, and accept that. And so as we plan our exit, I just try and maintain a high level of consciousness and let those thoughts drift by. And, I'm a really good state. So I enjoy hanging out in places like this where, it's kind of like taking a shower. You just kind of get rid of things and go, what's really important here? And who do you want to hang out with? So I'll shut up. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you. That was so wonderful. There's so many things we could, I think, if we had more time, we could go into some of those things that you mentioned, but it's a very just fresh, down to earth kind of example of what we're talking about. And this has been such a rich and spirited, I've loved this conversation. And I was wondering if Steph, since you got us going on this, do you want to take a little time and take us home?
Sure, if I can. I've been in and out during this call a little bit. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate everyone who shared. There's something very real about this thing we call community. And I love the questions that we're asking. I don't have answers to how this happens. I don't have all the answers, or even many of them, for how we can come together in a way that's connected and fluid and supportive and safe in the ways that we're talking about. But I do know that it's possible. It's possible because we experience it in small ways, in larger ways. It's possible because we can create it right here. So I don't know the how of everything, but I have a sense of the starting point. And I think it comes from all of us being together and settling down and finding what it is that we have in common, connecting, knowing our connection, and then beginning to see that we can actually live from that. And we don't have to go into the judgments and stressful thinking. And it's okay when we do, if we notice it. But I like what Peter said to me a couple weeks ago. If you have any thought, he was repeating something that he heard from Dr. Bill Pettit, but I'm going to quote you, Peter, because that's who I heard it from. If you have any thought that isn't neutral or positive, don't go there. Run away. It has nothing for you. Come back home. And I will continue to hold that hope that we can see that, because we're designed for that. And if we see that and do that together in community, I think there's something really magical that's possible. So I really look forward to exploring more of this, and I will certainly share what I'm discovering. But it's not about having it all figured out at all. It's an exploration. So I'm so grateful to each of you who has shared this with us today.
Great. Well, I'm super grateful, Steph, that you first of all were able to be here with us today with your travels, and for like really bringing this whatever this is really more alive, and the invitation and the openness for everyone. Has just been really a beautiful time together. So with that, I think we'll sign off and see you next time, and let's all stay in touch if we can. Take care.